You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, the 7th of March. Foreigners given free life-saving treatment by NHS. Illegal gets 15 months for robbing a woman. Sarkozy trying to halt the progress of the far right in elections. Moldovan government to chemically castrate paedophiles. Mitt Romney another victory in the primaries. Libyans form internal oil state. Gang grooming reaches US shores via Somalia. Thought for the day, the Keith Allen Show. UK news. Foreigners in Britain are to be treated free of charge for the treatment of HIV and AIDS, courtesy of the NHS at the expense of the great British taxpayer. Newcomers who come into Britain will now see this as a green light to head for Britain for free treatment. One BNP spokesman commented, "With this new law, our country will be sunk. Every African, Asian and Eastern European with AIDS will be heading to Britain getting treatment for HIV or spreading it, including the ones who rape women and groom teenage girls. In fact, we've been paying out for HIV treatment to illegal and legal immigrants for some time." A case last year was on Zimbabwean Philip Machimendezi, one of Robert Mugabe's secret police and torturers. Despite committing murders too gruesome to describe here, Machimendezi will be allowed to live scot-free in the UK at the cost of £50,000 per year to the British taxpayer, who must also fund his and his wife's HIV treatment as long as they live. We know there is no such guarantee for our own HIV sufferers if they went to live abroad, or indeed on home territory. An illegal immigrant from Gambia received 15 months in prison for robbing a defenceless woman. Ibrahim Douaf, aged 20, robbed British woman Leanne Jones in Gloucester last November. The judge ordered that Douaf be deported back to Gambia as soon as his sentence was finished. Douaf attacked the woman, who was married. "The woman's confidence has been taken away," one person commented. He struggled with the woman, but got her bag from her. He was caught yards away and arrested. When police arrested him, he said, "It's not like I murdered anybody." Euronews. French President Nicolas Sarkozy is trying his best to stop the far right in French presidential elections. He has now come out with a statement to the public that there are too many foreigners living in France, in a pathetic attempt to woo French voters, who have had immigrants taking their jobs for cheap pay for years. We would hope that this ploy, much used by our own political elite during pre-election times, should be surely transparent to all French voters. Moldovans have made the correct move and have paved the way for the rest of the world. Yesterday the Moldovan government passed a law to chemically castrate paedophiles in their country. This is reported to be without consent once forensic proof was found. The breakthrough to save children from paedophiles would stop thousands of children from being raped, abused and groomed. One source commented, "The British liberal elite will not chemically castrate paedophiles in Britain because a portion of those who support them or counsel for them are paedophiles themselves, convicted or not." Another commentator stated, "I wonder how many Muslims are living in Moldova. It would be interesting to hear if our grooming gangs are their problem as well." World news. American Republican Mitt Romney has won another victory in the primaries over rival Rick Santorum in the American state of Ohio. Although Mr Romney won the vote in Ohio, his rival Mr Santorum is in a possible second place to keep the race to the presidential elections open in the contest to face Barack Obama in November. The oil-rich zone of eastern Libya has had tribal leaders and commanders of the militia that toppled the Gaddafi government declare a semi-autonomous state. The spokesperson for the new Libyan government said this act is an Arab conspiracy. Some sources have said that this was the reason for the so-called democratic protesters toppling Colonel Gaddafi all along, of course with gullible Western help. We not only have Somali kidnappers and pirates now, but in the US 23 Somalis will go on trial this month in connection with operating a sex slavery ring that sold little girls into slavery in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Nashville, Tennessee and other cities. There are 30 accused in all, some of these with credit theft and fraud. According to the Tennessean paper, the trial will be unusual because all the defendants will appear before judge and jury at the same time. Agents from the Federal Immigration and Customs Enforcement (ICE) agency collared the 30 Africans in November 2010. The paper reported, in an era when limited resources and risk aversion have resulted in a dramatic rise in the number of cases that end in plea agreements rather than jury trials, not even one of the 30 defendants in this case has agreed to plead guilty, setting the stage for a massive trial in downtown Nashville that is raising a variety of issues both legal and logistical. Though the media has not mentioned it, the defendants are almost certainly Muslims. Somalia is a Muslim country. The 29 unnamed gang members, who include 3 women, are also accused of auto theft and credit card fraud. They were arrested after a 2-year-long investigation. The 30th person was arrested a year later. Personally, I like the Chinese way, 1 bullet and 1 wall. Thought for the day. Well, I had to comment on the Keith Allen interview with our chairman Nick Griffin, didn't I? Where do I start? Well, at the beginning, of course, in which we could all see that it was an old recording and has taken Channel 4 2 years to put on air. Why now? The 2 BNP staff described within the EU building had left both the EU and the party well over a year ago, and one wasn't even a member of the British National Party to start with. Keith Allen, who I have never heard of, and also have never heard of the daughter he apparently produced called Lily, who thankfully no longer warbles anti-racist filth but is now apparently on TV somewhere, and hopefully our paths will cross no more. I had a hard time trying not to laugh at Keith carrying his little ukulele around with him whenever he was around Nick, rather like a protective cross or something. The only time he made me laugh was when he tried to play it. Stick to the day job, Keith, old fellow. Well, he made a comment about always despising the far right. Well, good for him. We as a party despise the loony, uninformed left. So all is equal there. But of course not really. Because in the first place, the loony left seem to get away with racist and homophobic filth themselves. Firstly, in his daughter's song, which was thankfully cut short, and secondly when he made some very offside statements about a picture of Nick plus 2 BNP staff having dinner. How or why this picky reached him I do not know, but Keith's comment was that it was gay and queers are us. He was also heard to say to millions of viewers that if that picture turned up on Facebook he, Keith, would say he was so glad that they had at last decided to come out. So, no hang-ups there then, Keith? Or is this an example of the liberal loony left verbally gay bashing, or just libelously so? But it was the Muslim gang grooming points that really showed him up as uninformed and ignorant. He clearly defended Muslims of these crimes by saying that paedophilia covers all races and religions, and he is sure that white supremacist gangs do the same. Well, for his information, we are not discussing paedophilia per se. Of course the act of paedophilia covers all races and religions, and is not sacred to one but unfortunately to all of that persuasion. We are discussing the problem of Muslim gangs grooming underage girls in countries that they emigrate to. I have done a lot of research on this subject in the UK, and the fact is that these gangs are mainly Muslim. They operate usually in the north of England, and they can involve whole Muslim families on the male side, and it is the Muslim equivalent of modern day slavery, which of course the Arabs started in Africa hundreds of years ago. Keith questioned the validity of NG's claim quite nastily, but was proven wrong a year later when even Keith admitted at the end of the programme, on hearing the speech from Jack Straw, that Nick was half right. Big deal. Nick was wholly right on this and other events. Back to the Muslim grooming. In this country, and I am told other countries that contain large Muslim populations, the groomers never approach their own religion, i.e. Islam. Their own women folk are out of bounds as far as grooming goes. They do, however, span the racial barriers, being white, black, brown, yellow and all colours in between. The religious barriers are spanned, of course, Christian, Hindu and Sikh, never Muslim. As for white supremacist gangs, well, Mr. Looney left, the Eastern European gangs in the UK are sometimes Muslim and not usually racially supreme in any light. There is a case, which I have reported above, that has occurred in Nashville, Tennessee, for which Keith's edification is in the United States, in which 30 people, 23 of which are reportedly Muslim Somalis, had been accused of grooming girls as young as 13. Actually less of grooming than putting in the back of a van, gang raping them and setting them to work. In a lovely paragraph in this paper, the Tennessean reports, sex gangs might seem unheard to some Americans, but in Britain the gangs are out of control. In June, a Centre for Exploited Children reported that as many as 2,000 British girls had been forced into sex slavery. As well, a sex slavery gang was on trial in Britain at the same time. The Tennessean follows with, London's Daily Mail has repeatedly reported on Muslim sex slavery in the country, describing in great detail those who are responsible, mostly Pakistani Muslims. According to a report from one think tank, the Mail noted in January last year, at the time Britain had witnessed 17 court prosecutions since 1997, 14 of them in the past 3 years, involving the on-street grooming of girls aged 11 to 16 by groups of men. But now the issue has emerged again. British Conservatives are enraged that the media, they claim, refused to report on the trial of 47 Muslim sex slavers who appeared in court in Liverpool on January the 3rd. Critics claim the trial has been kept secret. The British National Party leadership is not only upset about the media blackout, but also another shocking fact. Those on trial for the sex slavery had been arrested and released for the same crime in the past, the party's website reported. This ends the quote from the Tennessean publication. Well, how is that for vindication, Mr. Looney left? We nationalists might not have changed in 50 years, but neither has the ignorance and blindness of the liberal Marxists. The British National Party first warned the powers that be on grooming crimes in 1997 and again in 2004. I have heard many stories from the actual sites of these cases and from the survivors' families, because that is what these girls do. Some survive and some do not. All of these stories have been unbelievable. Even Keith Allen and his leftist pals will be shocked, or maybe not, as he puts this problem down to white perverts. The final shot on the Keith Allen show was the EDL supporter, bless him, very drunk and probably not much more coherent when sober, giving vent, that was to show the great British public that if you want law and order, you choose the left, and if chaos and the village idiot, the far right. Very subtle, Channel 4, but not very believable. As the great Sir Winston Churchill said after World War II, we have put down the wrong dog. I suggest he was right. And finally, popularity of cream cakes is on the increase in cake shops and in the media in Switzerland. A cream cake attacker has gone on the loose and attacked former Swiss President Michel Camille. The former president was the victim of a full-on slat in the face with the cream cake as she exited a building earlier this week. The attack was called a violent cream cake attack because of the force used behind the splat, nearly knocking the 66-year-old onto her backside. The former president was slightly injured and very shaken. One person said she got a cake and it wasn't even her birthday. How lucky can you get? You have been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozart and I wish you all a very good night. Age 20, robbed British woman Leanne Jones in Gloucester last November. The judge ordered that Douaf be deported back to Gambia as soon as his sentence was finished. Douaf attacked the woman, who was married. The woman's confidence has been taken away, one person commented. He struggled with the woman but got her bag from her. He was caught yards away and arrested. When police arrested him, he said, "It's not like I murdered anybody." Euronews. French President Nicolas Sarkozy is trying his best to stop the murderers. Despite committing murders too gruesome to describe here, Matteo Mendesi will be allowed to live scot-free in the UK at the cost of £50,000 per year to the British taxpayer, who must also fund his and his wife's HIV treatment as long as they live. We know there is no such guarantee for our own HIV sufferers if they went to live abroad, or indeed on home territory. An illegal immigrant from Gambia received 15 months in prison for robbing a defenceless woman. Ibrahim Douaf will now see this as a green light to head for Britain for free treatment. One BNP spokesman commented, "With this new law, our country will be sunk. Every African, Asian and Eastern European with AIDS will be heading to Britain getting treatment for HIV or spreading it, including the ones who rape women and groom teenage girls. In fact, we've been paying out for HIV treatment to illegal and legal immigrants for some time." A case last year was on Zimbabwean Philip Machimendezi, one of Robert Mugabe's secret police and torture.
You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, the 7th of March. Foreigners given free life-saving treatment by NHS. Illegal gets 15 months for robbing a woman. Sarkozy trying to halt the progress of the far right in elections. Moldovan government to chemically castrate paedophiles. Mitt Romney another victory in the primaries. Libyans form internal oil state. Gang grooming reaches US shores via Somalia. Thought for the day, the Keith Allen Show. UK News. Foreigners in Britain are to be treated free of charge for the treatment of HIV and AIDS, courtesy of the NHS at the expense of the great British taxpayer. Newcomers who come into Britain